Hello and welcome back for a second episode of Growing Dragon Fruit from Cuttings. It's day 41. This episode spans a much longer period of time. The first episode only covered 26 days. I was really excited that I got all this bud growth within just 26 days of purchasing the plant from Lowe's, local big box store. And we have more bud development. It's kind of interesting, but I was sort of hoping this thing would grow more like a tree, and I realized based on one of the comments that perhaps it's not going to, and I didn't notice it at the time of the filming, but you can see a little tear. Well, it's actually quite a big tear on top of that first green plastic band, so I didn't notice that for quite some time. You can see at the bottom there, and later on, pretty much towards the end of this episode, I do something about it when I noticed it. So I've been doing a lot of filming at night during this time period. It was still in the winter, so by the time I got home from work, it was typically dark, and on Saturdays and Sundays, on the weekends, there really wasn't that much of a window of time to do any filming on the balcony in the morning. I'd have to get up really early, and all that rides on me not doing anything Friday night. So I did a lot of filming in the dark, basically, because I have these LED panels, and they've worked out really well. I basically don't have to worry about the backlighting problem that happens if it's, say, in the afternoon and there's a really bright background and the balcony is dark. That really ruins the videography. As you can see, it's really dry there. So the finger test, just digging in there on the periphery where you won't harm any roots, just to examine how wet the potting mix is a great method for testing to see how the soil is in terms of humidity or moisture. So this pot has a big hole at the very bottom, and it's very messy when I water. Leaks all over the place, and right now I'm just actually giving it a very wide shower just to wash any dust and dirt off of the main stems. So that results in even more of a mess because it's splashing all over the sides. So I should really get a watering tray for this. It's something that I've done for one of my plants. I got a, let's see, I think it was a 8-inch tray, no, maybe a 6-inch tray, but it fits the smaller pots. So it's day 48, and yeah, about what I was saying earlier, I basically didn't get any watering tray for this or the maybe 2 other plants that need it. So I've just been procrastinating. I've been very busy with other things as well, but I do have other plant growing series that haven't been revealed yet that are also from cuttings that I bought at a specialty nursery. So they're very interesting plants. It's just that they haven't gotten off to a good start in winter, and it has taken all the way until the end of March, basically spring, for them to have shown significant progress. So those episodes, first episodes, might take until 100 something days for me to post. So as you can see, there's actually another bud coming up on the bottom, so that's like 4 on the bottom. So based on one of the comments, this thing doesn't grow like a tree unless you were to prune all those things away. I don't know what that stuff is. It seems like bird feathers or something. So there are a lot of birds in this courtyard, and I have no idea what they're doing during the day. Actually, at the time of the conclusion of this video, basically day, let's see, 93, I had 2 mourning doves sitting on my balcony rail. So this is day 57, and I don't know what's going on there, but there's sort of a defect akin to, pimples and other things that we get on our skin. So I don't know if it's just branching off. That top one looks a lot healthier. It's sort of pinkish, but I don't know what those yellowish orange wounds are or defects are with a little bit of plant matter sticking out. It seems sort of like a budding off process, but If you look at all these original big buds, they're just coming off these, I don't know if you call these nodes where the spikes, the thorns are coming out of. So I thought that was how these things should bud. So I don't know what those wounds are on the top. Maybe they're caused by birds. I don't think they would be caused by insects. And it certainly doesn't look like a locust chewed on that. So it's one of those mysteries that for the time being remains unsolved. And this plastic stake that everything's tied to is, it's askew now. It used to be very straight when I bought this thing. If you were to go back and look at the original footage, and at least in my memory while watching all of this, I do remember this thing being a lot straighter, so I think it's expanding its root system, it's having all these offshoots, and that's kind of pushing everything off axis. And instead of growing like a tree, it'll be more of, this thing is an epiphyte, I think. It'll just have all these stems, fleshy stems, that will branch out. And eventually they will, upon getting too tall or having too many segments in the chain, sort of bend and fall over, like hair, basically, in a very odd sense. So it's day 63, and I'm trying a different angle. I spun around this wooden table, which badly needs a new paint finish job. It's all worn out, and I've sort of abused it over the last year or two. I've just had too many spills. I've moved a lot of pots around on the surface and scratched it up. And the original redwood colored, I believe, finish just never had any polyurethane coat or mixture in it to go along with it. So that didn't waterproof it. And eventually, just with all this wiping from rags and having all this standing water and spills and rain, a lot of the finish just washed away. So this fat offshoot, it looks pretty nice, but it seems like it gets to a certain size and then not much happens, and then all these other offshoots are coming out. So I don't really know what to make of that. It really pains me to try to cut away these offshoots, since it seems like everything that grows on this is just very fleshy, and it seems like that's a lot of resources to just cut away versus something that's more weedy with thin stems and paper thin leaves. You know, that stuff is easier psychologically to prune. So I don't really have experience with any of this. I'm growing this for the first time, so I don't know what to expect really, but I think it's an interesting plant, and definitely the fruit will be very valuable. And if I do get to the fruiting stage, or someday have my own yard where I could grow this and let it take up a lot of space, then I think it'll definitely pay off. It'll have great harvest. It doesn't seem like a very high maintenance plant at all. It seems like it uses more water than your typical southwestern American succulent or cacti that just grows wild. So we're looking at these wounds again. There are more of them. There are two that sort of look like rice grains in terms of size and coloration, but there's nothing coming out. And then you have two of these orangish brown margin wounds that I don't know what's coming out of them. It seems like they're little pieces sticking out, but they just don't get any bigger. So that stick is askew, like I said before. It stays 76, and as you can see, not much progress here. I think maybe I haven't been watering enough. It has been warming up, and I still haven't gotten a watering tray for this thing. And at the point of filming this, I still hadn't noticed that there's that split, that tear, due to all the torsional force exerted by being bound to that stick, basically, with plastic. So the plant is basically tearing itself apart, and there seems to be some kind of wound going on over there. I would think that was caused by a bird. I don't really think it's some kind of parasite living under the fleshy skin. I really don't think that's the case. I think maybe some kind of bird is poking around here because this thing really isn't that thorny, and it just might look juicy and tempting for a bird to try to extract some food out of. Maybe it likes the taste. So that's how I'm explaining this. If you have an alternate explanation, then please let me know in the comments, because I'd really be interested to know what these wounds are. And they don't really strike me as something caused by disease. So yeah, I just don't really get it. Like, that's two ugly wounds here that are getting bigger. Well, now that I think about it, maybe a bird wouldn't come and peck at the same spot if it's not really getting anything out of it. I just don't know what those things are. So if you think it's a disease and you know what the cause is, please let me know. And then that pink one on the top, it's not really progressing that much. So we'll see. I think overall, I'm pleased with the progress. The plant looks healthy, and it's adding a lot of biomass. If you add all those offshoots and new growth, that's probably significant on the scale. You can't say the same for most plants where they just have all these really, really thin leaves that if you were to just cut them all off and crumple them into a ball and weigh them, that would hardly be anything. So I think I really appreciate the substantial growth here. So over on the right, you can see my pomegranate seedlings before the transplant. That series is doing better. I have very limited experience making series about cuttings, and I know certain people appreciate this niche, but it seems like more people want to watch me grow things from seeds. So it's day 89. I'm just going to have a spinning view of this beautiful container art. It's actually just a plastic wraparound on the outside. And someday I'll get a watering tray for this, so I won't create such a big mess. But until then, I'm just going to keep talking about it until the third episode comes. So this bud has developed a little bit. The scratches are still there. They're very odd. And if that's a disease or a parasite, that's still a very odd pattern. And that bud just isn't doing much. This original one is just getting longer and longer, which is nice. It's sort of like a second trunk to this plant. And of course we still have that tear that I hadn't noticed for the longest time. So yeah, it's getting pretty crowded down there, but I'll just leave everything alone and see how it develops. I think at some point I would like to just do away with this wooden stake for support. And this one looks pretty yellow. I don't know if that means it's unhealthy. It's got a wound of its own too, with something sticking out in the middle. I don't know. This all strikes me as some kind of bizarre parasitism or some kind of defect. That doesn't seem very normal to me. Yeah, none of this does. The joints are supposed to come out of where all the spikes are. So the plant should just choose a random point for a new stem to burst out of, and these are definitely not anything like that. And they look pretty gaudy and gross at this point. So overall, I think the plant is healthy. I just don't know what those things are. So eventually I'll do more research into that. I've been really busy, so I've been sort of neglecting this. I don't water enough, I feel. Yet a lot of that is due to the fact that we've had an uncharacteristically cold winter in San Diego, and the cold has lasted for a very long time. The balcony here doesn't receive that much sunlight, and only in the morning does it get any sunlight, direct sun. So those two factors will really slow the evaporation rates of all my pots and the water usage of all the plants. I didn't want to water excessively, especially with all the rains that we've had. And sometimes it does get over the balcony rail and it does just soak directly into my pots. So I figured I was getting a lot of water that way, but I've seen and heard indications that this thing needs a lot more water than you would normally expect for a succulent or a cacti. So it's day 93. I'm finally going to do something about that tear. So I'm pointing at it in the video because I just realized that that had happened, even though if you go back to the very beginning of the second episode, you see that that tear was there all along. So there's kind of torque being exerted on this, and I cut that, but it didn't actually do anything in my opinion. It just seemed like no tension was released. So this doesn't really serve any purpose, but I figured that maybe if I cut the middle one away, that would help, and that maybe I didn't need to cut the first one. In any case, it's already been cut, and you could see a great release of tension there. So that solves the tearing problem for now, and I think I'll keep the one on top as is for quite a while. So please stay tuned to my YouTube channel and come back for a third episode. Thanks for watching.